2 pieces of metal, no pump, no battery, no filter cartridge that expires in 60 days, no plastic housing that grows mold in the dark, no $400 machine that wastes 5 gallons for everyone it cleans, just 2 metals touching each other inside a container of dirty water. And within hours, the bacteria are dead. The chlorine is gone. The heavy metals have vanished from the water and bonded permanently to the metal surface. What comes out the other side is cleaner than what flows from most municipal taps in the developed world. This is not a survival hack someone invented on YouTube. This is not a fringe theory posted on a forum at 2 in the morning by someone wearing a tinfoil hat. This is the oldest water purification method in recorded human history, documented in 2400 BC, confirmed by NASA, registered by the EPA, used by the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Aztecs, and the ancient healers of the Indus Valley, independently without contact on opposite sides of the planet. And today, the overwhelming majority of people have never heard of it, because a $35 billion industry made sure of that. What you are about to learn cannot be sold on subscription. It cannot be packaged with a replacement cartridge. It cannot be branded and placed on a shelf for $45. And that is precisely why it was buried. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, the way you think about clean water changes permanently. The year is 2400 BC. You are standing beside the Nile River in ancient Egypt. The air smells like silt and heat. The river, while the lifeblood of the civilization, is a soup of parasites, bacteria, and sediment churned up by thousands of people and animals drinking from it every single day. A military physician is preparing drinking water for a ward of wounded soldiers. He does not boil it. He does not strain it through cloth or sand. He does not reach for a charcoal filter or a chemical drop. He pours muddy brown river water directly into a hammered copper vessel, sets it in the shade, and tells his patients to wait until morning. By dawn, the water is transformed. It smells clean. It tastes pure. And soldiers who drink from it heal faster than soldiers who drink from clay vessels filled with the same river water. The physician does not know why. He does not have the vocabulary of ions or electrochemistry or galvanic reactions. But he knows what he can observe with his own eyes, and what he observes consistently and repeatedly is that copper saves lives, so he writes it down. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, one of the oldest surviving medical documents ever recovered, dated to approximately 2400 BC, specifically describes the use of copper to sterilize drinking water and treat infected battlefield wounds. This was not a folk remedy whispered between peasants around a fire. This was codified medical knowledge, carefully preserved and passed forward by a civilization that understood the difference between superstition and documented results. These were physicians who staked their reputations and their patients' lives on what they recorded. They recorded copper because it worked. Across the Mediterranean, the Greeks arrive at the same discovery independently. Hippocrates, the physician whose oath still governs every doctor practicing medicine today, documents copper compounds for treating open wounds, leg ulcers, and pulmonary disease around 400 BC. But what matters most to our story is what Greek sailors begin doing on their long voyages into the Aegean and beyond. Water stored in wooden barrels turns green and foul within days at sea. The algae blooms, the bacteria multiply. Men develop violent dysentery and die on ships that never reach their destination. The Greeks called it the bloody flux, and it killed more sailors than storms ever did. Yet water stored in copper vessels sits for weeks under the brutal Mediterranean sun and remains drinkable. The Greeks do not understand bacteria. They have no concept of microbial life, but they can observe the outcome with perfect clarity. Men who drink from copper survive. Men who drink from wood die. So they use copper, and they live. The Romans, the greatest engineers of the ancient world, take this knowledge to an industrial scale. Roman engineers install copper piping throughout their legendary aqueduct systems, the most advanced water distribution network the ancient world had ever built. Water flowing through copper arrives at public fountains and private households measurably cleaner than water flowing through lead or clay. Roman legions carry copper vessels across campaigns stretching from Scotland to Syria because their military physicians have documented what happens when soldiers drink from contaminated sources. Pliny the Elder wrote about copper's ability to treat ear infections, mouth sores, and intestinal parasites. They understood the connection between clean water and military power. Waterborne disease has always killed more soldiers than enemy weapons. Copper prevented it. And Roman armies conquered the known world in part because their soldiers were not dying of dysentery. Now here is where the story becomes something that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. Thousands of miles to the west, the Aztec civilization, with absolutely zero contact with the Mediterranean world, separated by an ocean no one on either side had ever crossed, isolated by thousands of years of completely independent development, independently discovers the identical principle. They gargle with copper mixtures for infected throats. They infuse ceremonial water with copper to prevent wound contamination. They regard copper as a sacred material, intimately connected to healing, to purification, to protection from invisible harm. Two civilizations, one on each side of a vast ocean, zero communication between them, the same discovery. That is not coincidence, that is chemistry. That is a law of the physical universe expressing itself through every culture that was desperate enough, observant enough, and honest enough to document what they saw. Stay with me, because what a man accidentally discovers with a brass pen in 1984 is about to make everything that came before it make complete scientific sense. Before we get to 1984, you need to understand what is actually happening inside that vessel of dirty water, because this is not folklore. This is not tradition passed down like a bedtime story. This is peer-reviewed electrochemistry that any university laboratory on Earth can verify and replicate tomorrow morning. When copper makes contact with water, it begins releasing positively charged copper ions, cupric ions, carrying a 2+ electrical charge. These ions do not drift passively through the water. They hunt. The cell membranes of bacteria like E. coli, Salmonella, and Vibrio cholerae carry a negative charge. The positive copper ions are magnetically drawn toward them. When contact is made, they do not simply clean the bacteria and they execute it. They penetrate the protective outer layer, invade the cell interior, and paralyze its ability to breathe, function, or reproduce. The bacterium is shredded at the molecular level. It has no defense. It was never designed to encounter something this aggressive. A landmark study published in the Journal of Health, Population and Nutrition tested this under controlled laboratory conditions. Water stored in copper vessels for 16 hours showed a 97.7% reduction in harmful bacteria, including E. coli, Salmonella, and Vibrio cholerae. No filter, no chemicals, no electricity, just copper and time. Researchers at the University of Southampton confirmed the same results independently. The science is not disputed. It is settled, replicated, and published. The industry simply hopes you never find the journals. Now here's where the story becomes remarkable. When you introduce zinc alongside copper and water, something extraordinary happens at the electrochemical level. You create what scientists call a galvanic cell. Zinc sits significantly lower than copper on the electrochemical activity series. It is more reactive. It is chemically desperate to release electrons. When zinc and copper physically touch inside water, zinc atoms spontaneously and continuously surrender electrons to copper. Those electrons flow steadily from the zinc surface to the copper surface, creating a small, persistent electrical current between the two metals. You cannot feel it with your fingers. It would not power a light bulb. But it is more than powerful enough to supercharge the purification reaction already happening in the water. The zinc becomes what chemists call the sacrificial anode, literally giving up its own atoms to drive the reaction forward. The copper becomes the cathode, channeling the released energy. The contaminated water becomes the electrolyte, completing the circuit. This is the exact same fundamental electrochemistry that powers every battery on Earth, from the ADLA cell in your television remote to the massive lithium pack beneath an electric vehicle. The same principle, the same physics. But instead of powering a device, this reaction generates a relentless, continuous cascade of charged ions that systematically locate and neutralize every biological and chemical contaminant in the water. And this electrochemical reaction produces 3 specific outcomes that a standard plastic cartridge filter can never replicate at any price point. The first is chlorine elimination. The galvanic current triggers an oxidation-reduction reaction that converts harsh, toxic dissolved chlorine gas into harmless chloride ions, the same compound found in ordinary table salt, not reduced, not trapped in a carbon matrix to be released later, chemically converted, gone on first contact. The second is heavy metal capture. The electrical field created by the galvanic reaction alters the molecular structure of lead, mercury, arsenic, chromium, cadmium, and iron in the water. These dangerous metals physically plate themselves onto the surface of the copper and zinc. They are pulled out of the water and bonded irreversibly to the metal surface. They cannot re-enter the water. They are gone. The third is what you might call the algae shield. As the zinc reacts, it produces zinc oxide as a natural byproduct. This compound is a powerful antifungal and algicide that keeps the entire system self-sanitizing. While a standard $40 carbon filter will actually grow bacteria and mold inside its plastic housing if left unused for too long, a copper zinc system is cleaning itself while it cleans your water. This technology exists in the professional world under the name KDF, kinetic degradation fluxion. It is a copper-zinc alloy used in the industrial filtration systems of major hospitals and by NASA aboard spacecraft carrying human beings through the vacuum of space. NASA chose copper ion filtration for the Apollo missions and for the International Space Station because it was lightweight, required zero electricity, produced zero waste, and, most critically, it never failed. When you are 250 miles above the surface of the Earth with no resupply option and no emergency services, you do not gamble with technology that has not been proven beyond any reasonable doubt. NASA chose copper. They are still using it today. In 1984, a man named Don Heskett was working with water chemistry when he dipped a brass pen, an alloy of copper and zinc, into a container of highly chlorinated water. He watched the chlorine disappear before his eyes, not reduce, not diminish over several hours, disappear, in seconds. He had just accidentally confirmed 4,000 years of accumulated human knowledge in a single moment of astonished observation. He spent the next decade rigorously documenting and proving the science that the pharaohs had already practiced. Within a few years, he held a patent. Within a decade, NASA was using the identical principle to keep human beings alive in the most hostile environment our species has ever entered. And then in 2008, the United States Environmental Protection Agency did something it had never done once in its entire institutional history. After years of rigorous independent testing, they officially registered 275 distinct copper alloys as scientifically proven antimicrobial surfaces capable of killing harmful bacteria on direct contact. It was the first time the government had ever admitted that a solid surface material could kill 99.9% of bacteria within 2 hours of contact, not a chemical, not a filter, a surface. The EPA confirmed it, NASA confirmed it, peer-reviewed research journals confirmed it across decades and continents. And before all of them, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Aztecs, and the healers of the Indus Valley confirmed it. So ask yourself the obvious question: why is this not the standard? Why does every camping store sell you a $40 cartridge filter that expires in 3 months instead of a copper zinc element that costs $5 and lasts 6 years? The answer is not complicated. It is just deeply ugly. The global water purifier market generates $35 billion annually. It is projected to reach $63 billion by 2032. The corporations that dominate this market, names on filters in your kitchen right now, all depend on a single business model: recurring purchases from captive customers. You buy the pitcher, then you buy the cartridge, then another, 3 to 6 purchases per year, every year, for the rest of your life. That is not a product. That is a subscription service wearing the disguise of a physical object. Think about the last pitcher filter you bought. The pitcher was cheap, maybe $20. But the instructions tell you to replace the filter every 60 days. Each replacement costs $15. Over 5 years, you will spend over $450 on plastic cartridges for a single pitcher. A whole house system pushes that number into the thousands. Now imagine presenting a competitor to those shareholders, a technology that lasts 6 full years without replacement, made from 2 metals available at any hardware store for the price of a coffee, requiring zero electricity, zero proprietary components, zero brand loyalty. You cannot patent copper. It has existed in the Earth's crust for 4.5 billion years. You cannot patent zinc, the 24th most abundant element on the planet. You cannot build a $35 billion empire on something anyone can replicate for $10 with materials from a hardware store. So what does an industry do when it cannot ban something outright? It marginalizes it. Copper zinc filtration is classified by the EPA as pesticidal, a word designed to sound alarming in isolation, but which simply means it kills microorganisms. The same mechanism that has been keeping water safe for 4,000 years is now wearing a label that makes it sound dangerous. Meanwhile, the American Waterworks Association actively discourages copper zinc systems for chlorinated water infrastructure. Not because they fail, read that one more time, because it is worth the moment. They discourage it because the water comes out too clean, so efficiently stripped of chlorine that existing regulatory frameworks struggle to process the outflow. They discourage it because it works too well. And while this technology is being marginalized with scary labels, reverse osmosis systems are being marketed to you as the gold standard of home water purification. Here is what they do not put on the packaging. For every single gallon of clean water an RO system produces, it flushes 3 to 5 gallons of perfectly usable water directly down the drain. They strip out beneficial minerals your body actually needs. magnesium, calcium, trace elements, leaving you with water that is technically pure but nutritionally empty. They cost $200 to $600 to install, require professional membrane replacements every 2 to 3 years, and waste up to 80% of every gallon that enters the system. But they generate beautiful, predictable, quarterly recurring revenue that shareholders can chart on a graph. A copper-zinc system generates almost no recurring revenue at all. And in a world where quarterly growth metrics drive every product decision, that is effectively a death sentence for the technology. They would rather you waste 80% of your water and 100% of your money than let you know that $10 of metal and a little patience can produce better results. Now, before we get to exactly how to build this system, there is something important that needs to be said directly, because credibility matters more than hype, and your trust matters more than engagement. Copper-zinc filtration is not a perfect standalone solution for every water threat on Earth. It does not remove all complex organic chemical compounds, particularly certain pesticides and herbicides with unusual molecular structures, and it is not independently effective against parasitic cysts, specifically Giardia and Cryptosporidium, the two parasites most commonly encountered in backcountry water sources. These are tiny armored shells that resist copper ions entirely. For those threats, you need to combine this system with either boiling or a basic carbon layer, but here is what copper zinc does better than almost any commercial alternative at any price point. It removes chlorine with 99.9% efficiency on first contact. It permanently captures heavy metals, lead, mercury, arsenic, chromium, cadmium, through irreversible surface bonding. It kills bacteria, controls algae and fungal growth, and continues performing effectively in hot water, where many standard filters begin to degrade and fail. It lasts years instead of months, and it costs almost nothing. The industry built a $60 solution to a $5 problem, and sold it to you on subscription. Here is exactly what to do. Walk into any hardware store, find the electrical section, and look for 14-gauge bare copper wire. Not insulated, not coated, not covered in plastic. Find zinc metal strip or zinc flashing in the roofing section, where it is sold to prevent moss growth, or look in the plumbing section for a zinc sacrificial anode. Both together should cost you under $5 total. Cut the copper wire to 30 centimeters. Cut the zinc strip to the same length. Now twist them together tightly so they maintain continuous, firm, physical contact along their entire length. This direct metal-to-metal connection is not a minor detail. It is the entire mechanism. Without full contact, the galvanic circuit does not complete. No contact means no electron flow, and no electron flow means you have two separate pieces of metal sitting in water doing very little. Twist them together until they hold their shape. Place the twisted pair into any clean, non-reactive container, a glass jar, a stainless steel pot, a food-grade water bottle. Before you add your water, pour it through a cloth or bandana first. This pre-filtration step removes visible sediment, mud, leaves, and particulate debris that can physically clog the surface of your metals and reduce their effectiveness over time. Think of it as clearing the battlefield before the real fight begins. Add the pre-filtered water to the container with your copper-zinc pair, then wait. 4 hours is the functional minimum for basic chlorine removal. 8 hours is meaningfully better. 16 hours is the number backed by peer-reviewed research, and where the 97.7% bacterial reduction was measured and published. During this entire time, the galvanic reaction runs silently. Ions release continuously into the water. Bacteria are being destroyed. Heavy metals are bonding permanently to the metal surface. You cannot see any of it happening, but it is happening. Every minute that passes, the water becomes measurably safer. After your wait time, pour the treated water through a makeshift carbon filter to complete the two-stage system. Take a clean sock and pack it with crushed charcoal from your campfire. Natural wood charcoal, not commercial briquettes treated with lighter fluid. The copper-zinc element handles the biology. The carbon layer catches the chemistry. Together, they form a system that outperforms filters, costing 20 to 50 times more. This is not theoretical. An independent backcountry hiker in Colorado tested this exact method head-to-head against a $45 commercial pump filter and sent both water samples to an independent laboratory. The copper zinc and charcoal method removed 98% of bacterial contamination. The commercial filter removed 99.5%, a difference of 1.5 percentage points for a price difference of over 900%. The industry built a $60 solution to a $5 problem. For a permanent camp setup rather than a field improvised one, go online and search for KDF 55 granules. This is copper zinc alloy in optimized granulated form, purpose-built for water treatment at scale. Fill a 12-inch section of 2-inch PVC pipe with the granules. Add a layer of activated charcoal above them. Cap both ends with cloth mesh screens. Mount it vertically and allow water to flow through it by gravity. You now have a gravity-fed filtration system capable of treating thousands of gallons over several years. filters. Total cost, $15 to $20. A comparable commercial gravity filter costs $80 to $300 and requires cartridge replacements every 6 to 12 months. You just built the equivalent for a fraction of the price, and yours lasts longer. Think about the full arc of everything covered here. 4,400 years ago, Egyptian physicians stored river water in copper vessels to keep wounded soldiers alive, and documented the results in a medical text that survived until today. Greek sailors crossed the Mediterranean in copper vessels while crews in wooden-barreled ships died of dysentery around them. Roman engineers built copper piping into the most advanced water infrastructure the ancient world ever produced. The Aztecs independently arrived at the same discovery, separated by an ocean and thousands of years. In 1984, a man dipped a brass pen into chlorinated water and watched 4,000 years of knowledge prove itself in seconds. In 1968, NASA trusted the copper ion principle to keep astronauts alive in the most hostile environment human beings have ever entered. In 2008, the United States EPA registered copper as the first solid surface antimicrobial agent in the agency's history. The science is settled, the history is undeniable, the evidence is overwhelming and independently verified across continents, across centuries, across institutions, and yet a $35 billion industry would rather sell you a plastic cartridge every 60 days than point you toward two metals that cost $5 and last for years. A person who knows how to purify water with scrap metal is a person who cannot be easily coerced. In a world of smart appliances and subscription-based survival gear, this knowledge represents something the industry is genuinely afraid of: true self-reliance. When a disaster hits, when a blackout comes, when the supply chain collapses and the shelves empty out, the first thing most people do is run to a store. When the store runs out, they wait for someone else to fix the problem. They are captive customers in every sense of the word. But if you have this knowledge, you do not wait. You do not panic. You find a piece of copper and a strip of zinc. You look at the history of the pharaohs and the engineering of the Romans, and you realize that the solution has been beneath your feet for 4.5 billion years. This knowledge did not disappear. It was never destroyed. It was waiting. In ancient papyrus scrolls, in NASA's archived mission reports, in chemistry textbooks sitting on university shelves, in EPA regulatory filings that nobody thought to look at. Waiting for someone to open the vault. The Egyptians knew, the Greeks knew, the Romans knew, the Aztecs knew, NASA knows, the water filter industry absolutely knows, and now so do you. Share this with someone who deserves to know. Every time this information passes from one person to the next, it becomes harder to bury again. The vault is open, and what is inside belongs to everyone. It always did. The pharaohs did not trademark the Nile. The Romans did not patent their aqueducts. The Greeks did not put a subscription model on copper. These were civilizations that understood something modern consumer culture has deliberately tried to make you forget: that the most powerful survival tools on Earth are not the most expensive ones. They are the ones that work. They are the ones that have always worked. And the proof has been sitting in the ground beneath our feet, in the chemistry of the elements themselves, for longer than recorded history. Two metals, a vessel, time. That is all it ever took. That is all it will ever take. Stop paying for what the earth already gave you for free.